Here we go. Hi, it's Shantae again, and I'm back here to talk about why I left my church and continuing on this conversation. And today I want to talk about the friendship aspect of church life and church culture. So when I left my church, I thought I had a good number of friends, like solid friends, people that I was really open and honest with and really vulnerable with, and people that I thought I'd be friends with for a really long time. It's not hard to imagine that generally in church people are pretty nice, so when people are nice, it's not hard to make friends with them, and you have some similar interests. Obviously you make friends similar to how you would in the real world. Most of the friends that I made were usually through volunteering activities or through Bible study that I went to once a week. And when you do these things regularly, you see the same people, you eventually become friends with them, similar to how you do in school. People are there and it's convenient and you're like, oh, we like this one thing, so let's hang out. And in this context, that one thing that you have in common with that friend is Jesus. I didn't realize how many friends that I had simply out of convenience and simply because we both liked our church setting and liked the environment. The problem that I see now with making friends in the church is just that if one of you leaves, even if you go to a different church, you are not in the same church anymore, so you just see that person way less, meaning you have to be more intentional about taking that friendship outside of the church, which can be really hard for some people. Or if you just decide to leave altogether, if you have a change of heart, change of faith, whatever, the one thing that you had in common in the beginning isn't there anymore. And if you never developed any other commonalities with this person or with a group of people, there's not much left there. Now, I feel like I tried pretty hard to make genuine friendships with people, especially in like my later teen years. I found it a little bit easier to make friends because you actually had to talk about, your similar interests, your music, movies, home and family life, things like that. But as you kind of become a young adult, seasons of life change and suddenly your friendships become a little bit more restricted based on what you're doing in life or where you're at. So if you're 20 and you get married, then you're gonna start hanging out with other 20-year-olds who are also married because that's the group that you now fit into. Once you start having kids, then you kind of start hanging out with other people who have kids. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but in my experience, I found it very limiting because as soon as someone got married, I suddenly just didn't see them, and it wasn't because they were always with their spouse, it was because they were with their spouse and another couple, and as a single person, you just don't really fit into that group anymore, and that kind of sucks because I kind of just feel like everyone should be able to be friends with people that they get along with, and that's it. It kind of surprises me how many friendships I feel like were based off of superficial things and not genuine connection. I remember I even had people comment on some of my friendships with other people who were in the same phase of life as me. So I actually, at one point, most of my friends were all married couples in their like mid to late 20s, and then I was just a single me. And people would be like, oh, that's so interesting that you can like hang out with these people and not like feel weird about it. Or it's so cool that you hang out with so-and-so and you go out for dinner with them and you don't feel like a third wheel. And it's like, no, I don't, because we're just people and we're just hanging out. And as long as nobody makes it weird, it doesn't really have to be weird. I actually lived with a married couple for about a year and a half, and I honestly loved it. The three of us were really good friends. One thing that made it a really good friendship was that I had my own individual relationship with both the husband and the wife. It wasn't like I was only friends with them as a collective unit. I had my friendship with both of them, and then I had the friendship with one of them and then the other one, and it all worked out really well. I never felt anything weird about it. I don't think they did either. We all got along super well, and we had a lot of history together, so there was more than just we had Jesus in common, we went to the same church, and that was it. One of the weirdest taboos and things that always frustrated me in my years at the church was the issue of having friends of the opposite gender. I had no problem with it. I had guy friends that I loved to hang out with and I would gladly go out for dinner with or text with casually. Like, to me, that was a non-issue. It was mostly those guys who actually made it an issue because they wanted to make sure that any other eligible women didn't feel threatened or that I posed any interest in that guy. They wanted to make sure that they kept themselves at arm's length from me so that the girls that they were actually interested in would pose interest in them as well. And maybe some of these guys were just jerks. In retrospect, some of them are. Having friends of the opposite gender is subtly discouraged, I would say. I knew some guys who were very stern about it, and they were very clear about how we could be friends inside the church walls, but when it came to outside of the church, they didn't want to see me. They would not have a one-on-one coffee with me or anything like that, simply because it could be viewed as inappropriate by someone else, or to them it was just inappropriate. It was just that guys should be friends with guys and girls should be friends with girls, which in itself is just doesn't include anyone in any other non-binary lifestyle, but that's a different video. I think the idea that it was so easy to make friends in the church was one of the reasons that it was so difficult to leave. But that also kind of opened up my eyes a little bit, because as soon as I realized that I wasn't actually losing a lot of friends, I was just losing a lot of acquaintances, I knew I needed to find friends elsewhere, and friends who actually understood me. Looking back, I definitely have a lot more acquaintances than friends. I had a lot of people that I knew a lot of things about, but didn't really share any significant relationship with. I had friends outside of the church that I shared all of those things with, but my friends inside the church really discouraged me from having strong, intimate relationships with friends who weren't also strong Christians. I think it can be really dangerous only having Christian friends, because then you're only surrounded by people who think like you and you're not challenged, and if everyone in that group has a potentially hateful or dangerous thought process, then no one's going to be there to correct them. I really wish that I had made more friends outside of the church at a younger age, and I always had a hard time making friends in my workplace, a lot of the time because I let my religion get in the way of me actually seeing that person as a person. Because now that I'm not at my church anymore, I had to start over. I had to make friends from the ground up. I have some really great friends in my life now, people that I am very grateful for. People who have only ever met me since leaving the church and wouldn't believe who I used to be. But probably very similar to the way that people who knew me a couple years ago don't really know me now and wouldn't believe who I am now. I think the biggest difference is that I could screw up really hard. I could do anything. I could tell them anything and they would accept it and take me as I am. And I don't think that a lot of my church friends did that. And because of that, there was a lot of things they didn't tell people. Christian friends like to try and correct each other's behavior because the Bible says that you're supposed to correct each other and iron sharpens iron and stuff like that. But I think a lot of the time, and I don't think it's intentional, but a lot of the time it comes off more as judgment than as actual correction or criticism. So for the people who are in my life now, thank you. Just don't be an asshole. That's it. That's how you make friends. I'm not saying you can't have Jesus as a commonality with people. I'm not saying you can't have faith or religion as a commonality for friendship. I'm just saying it should stretch beyond that. I'm good. I've talked enough. Goodbye. Was anyone told as a kid that Jesus was their forever friend? I was.